Welcome to another episode of A Slice of Heaven. Before I get started with this week's episode, I talked with my daughter and son-in-law, and they said, "Mom, you made this wrong." On the hummus recipe, it calls for half of the water or the liquid from the garbanzo beans that you're going to drain. And they said when you use red pepper in your recipe, the extra liquid is going to make it too messy, too sloppy, too runny. And so when they make it, they don't add any extra liquid, especially when you're using the red peppers. So if you can just go back to your recipe and just change that, so when you make it, it should be more of a solid hummus rather than having the extra liquid in it. So hopefully you don't ruin your hummus, but if you eat it right away, then that kind of takes care of that problem. So today we are going to make a poppy seed dressing, which I use for my spinach salad. And I'm going to start out at my stove by sauteing some pecans in just a little bit of butter. Sometimes when people toast pecans or almonds or some other kind of nut, they just put them in the pan without the butter, but I just put a little bit of butter in. So I'm going to put my pecans in, and then I'm going to make the poppy seed dressing. So I have just a little bit of butter in a little saucepan, and I typically let that just melt. It doesn't take long when there's just a little bit. You don't need much. And when you saute your nuts, pecans or walnuts, almonds, you especially with almonds, you have to be careful because sometimes you can be sauteing them and it seems like it takes forever for them to actually start to turn brown. But then once they do start turning brown, then they can burn really, really quickly. So you have to be more careful with the almonds. But I'm just going to put a handful or so of pecans in my pan. And I'm just going to stir them a little bit. I've got it on between like 2 and 4, kind of do it on a little bit lower temperature. And while I do my poppy seed dressing, the pecans are going to be toasting, and it just takes a few minutes to do that. So now we're going to head back to the table and make my dressing. I'm going to start with a cup of oil, and actually what you can do is, I'm using my blender, and if you have the measurements on your blender, you can just use that measurement, which then you don't have to dirty up an additional container. And it doesn't have a specific kind of oil. This is a Wesson that I'm using, but you can probably, it calls for a vegetable oil, but you could probably use canola oil if you wished. And then we're going to put in 1/3 of a cup of red wine vinegar. And again, you can buy the red wine vinegar that's much more expensive. This is, I think, it's a great value. You can use Great Value, Essential Blend, really whatever you want in your red wine vinegar. That off. It calls for a teaspoon of dry mustard. And calls for 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. So we're just going to put a little salt in there. Okay, I think we're all set. So we're just going to blend this for a little while. This is number 2 on my blender. Okay, got that blended a little bit, and then it calls for a tablespoon of onion, and you want it chopped fairly fine, and this is going to be about a tablespoon. And I have a Pampered Chef chopper, so it's going to make a lot of noise. That should be enough. Get all the onion out. Some people don't like onion or don't like a lot of onions, so if you have it fairly chopped, that's kind of nice. That in. And when I'm making my poppy seed dressing, I like to make it the day, at least the day before, so then you get in your, the flavor goes in much better. And then I'm going to add, gives it a chance for the flavor to go in when it's sitting overnight. It calls for a tablespoon, 1.5 tablespoons of poppy seed. So I'm going to blend that again, and then you will add half a cup of sugar. The recipe I used actually calls for more than a half a cup, but it gets really sweet even with the half a cup, so a half a cup is really plenty. So I'm going to blend this, and then I'm going to slowly add the sugar in then on top. Okay, I'm going to just stir my pecans, and I'll be right back. And you can kind of tell, as I said before, when the pecans or walnuts or almonds are pretty much toasted, they're going to start to give off a different, kind of a smell. So you want to get them off before they burn, but when you kind of smell kind of sweet, kind of a little bit different, then they're done. So I toasted them for maybe 5 minutes or so, and then I'm just going to put them on a board or on a plate or whatever you'd like. And I'm going to just let them sit, and again, some of that buttery oil will come out. And as I said, you can toast them. Some people will toast, if you're doing a large amount, you can toast them in the oven at maybe 250 degrees, 225 degrees. And again, just watch them so that they don't burn. And so you can toast them with or without the butter. So I'll let those set out a little bit. And again, when you're making your salad, you can do these up the day before, so everything is all set just to assemble. So I've got my strawberries cut, and I've got my spinach in a bowl, so we're all set to assemble the salad for dinner tonight. So what I like to use to store my dressing is in either, I have a couple of Tupperware shaker containers, or even just some kind of a glass container, because then I like to have it in something that I can easily shake so that you can mix up your dressing the next day. It gets quite thick as it's sitting in your container in the refrigerator. So then before you put it on your salad, then you'll want to give it a good shake so that you get that all mixed up well. Sorry. So I am just going to add not too much dressing, because if you put in too much, it can get really oily, and because there is the sugar in, it can tend to get pretty sweet. So sometimes we actually use this recipe a lot with our catering, with the spinach salad, which people really enjoy. So we go through quite a bit of this dressing. And we've actually had, made this up and had it in the refrigerator for several weeks. So it's just like, your other dressings that you buy from the grocery store. If you make it ahead, make a larger quantity, then you can have it for a long time. So I'm going to make the individual plates. And if you're doing individual salads, then you can just put a few pecans and strawberries on your plate. One thing, unfortunately, with I think a lot of green salads, if you make it and you toss it with the dressing, if it's not eaten, consumed the same day, you may as well just throw it out. And hopefully you don't have to throw a large quantity out, because when it sets in the refrigerator overnight, it just is not really good. On top, I'm just going to put these like so. Then it's good to actually have your pecans cooled off, so you can just stick those in the refrigerator after you toast them. Parmesan cheese. So here we are all set. So from a slice of heaven, happy cooking.